Getting straight into the top 5 news stories of the day. Months of secret talks finally came to light yesterday in a symbolic shaking of hands between Cuba and the U.S. Now, the news began with the release of American contract worker Alan Gross, who had been in prison in Cuba for the last 5 years. Then the day continued with the president announcing his dramatic shift in U.S.-Cuban policy.
These 50 years have shown that isolation has not worked. It's time for a new approach.
Obama's announcement was followed by an almost immediate announcement in Cuba by their president, Raul Castro. As you can imagine, the move without Congress's approval drew a lot of backlash, but on the flip side, a lot of Cuban Americans and Cubans were celebrating. So here's what we know so far. First, Obama aims to expand economic ties, open an embassy in Havana, send officials to visit, ease restrictions on travel to Cuba. But important to know, travel tourism is still banned. So I guess we'll have to wait a little longer to visit. All right, moving over to Texas, the search continues for a suspect who shot a local weatherman several times outside the KCET TV station in Waco. The suspect fled the scene after shooting Patrick Crawford, who is the station's morning show meteorologist. Police say the suspect walked up to Crawford as he was getting in his car, and they exchanged words before he was shot. Crawford was able to drive off and flag down a construction worker for help. Officials say he is now in stable condition after undergoing surgery. And a string of arrests early Wednesday morning led to a number of charges for the 2012 meningitis outbreak that killed 64 people and made hundreds sick. The outbreak was tied to tainted steroid injections that came from the New England Compounding Center. The pharmacy's owners were charged with second-degree murder. A number of employees and supervisors were also arrested. Environmentalists in New York are breathing a huge sigh of relief this morning as lawmakers in the state announced plans to prohibit fracking for natural gas, all because, of course, of the health risks it could pose. New York sits over the Marcellus Shale Formation, which is rich in natural gas and has led to a boom in drilling in nearby states. But lawmakers say there are too many unknowns to allow the practice in New York. All right, last in your top 5. So we've been thinking it for a while now, and finally the feds are confirming that North Korea is in fact behind the huge Sony hack that has been the talk of the town for the past few weeks. Now, officials also confirm they are behind the recent threats to moviegoers and movie theaters that plan to show the controversial film The Interview. The flick is a dark fictional comedy about a plot to kill the leader of North Korea. In spite of the threats, the president says intelligence and security officials are working on the case, and there's no need for Americans to fear going to the movies. Of course, this also comes as Sony cancels the entire release of the movie. We'll talk about that more in a second. Jess, I know you're covering that, but big question, you guys. Did we cave into North Korea's bullying? What do you think?
I kind of feel like we did. I remember back in the 90s, there was this movie with Leslie Nielsen where they'd have like Saddam Hussein and they'd like drop bombs on him, and it was more like a comedy thing. Was it Naked Gun?
Was it Naked Gun?
It was Hot Shots.
Hot Shots.
Okay, and it wasn't that, but then again, we didn't receive those sort of threats. So, but I do kind of feel like we caved in.
I think they won. You know, I think this is the first time a hacker has really made, you know, this type of
pretty crazy.
ruling for anything, you know? So they definitely won.
Of course. While they did win, though, I do think it's important that we keep ourselves safe. I know that we're a vigilant country, of course, but safety first. I mean, if they're making these real threats and it is, in fact, North Korea, I think we need to listen to it and figure out a plan of action to, you know...